Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 108 of the Sports Daily College Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowles. Mike Kumar is with me, and tonight, Mike and I have got a Final Four recap and a national championship preview. And, Mike, tournament hasn't been the most entertaining for the viewers. This Final Four was hyped up as one of the best ever, and safe to say it delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot of complaints in the college basketball fandom world about how we haven't really had the upsets. We had all number one seeds make it. College basketball is screwed. It's never going to be the same anymore. But with that being said, we had the best Final Four we've had in years. I'm trying to go back and think about one where we had two highly competitive games that came down to the wire. I can't think of any in the moment. We had great games. UCLA versus Gonzaga was an instant classic, but the other Final Four in that game was a 25-point game at halftime. And that's usually the trend is in Final Fours, you'll have one good game and one blowout. We did not see that. We saw two incredible games, four great teams, clearly the four best teams in college basketball all year, and we were treated to some tremendous finishes. Unless you're a Duke fan, then it was a tragic finish in that game. But some outstanding games, and you looked at Florida's ability to just make big shots coming down the stretch was huge, and Houston just finding a way to win.
And yeah, the ratings have come in, great viewership numbers TV wise for the Final Four, 15.5 million, peaked at 20, and the stadium 68,000 were in the arena there the stadium there at the Alamo Dome. So the whole college basketball is dead thing is not really surviving very long. But game one, Mike, was Florida versus Auburn. Obviously, both teams in the SEC. They did play already once this year in Auburn, Alabama. It was Florida that won that game, and it was the same here. Gators win 79-73, but it was Auburn that led by 8 at halftime, and Florida comes out, wins the second half 41-27, and it's the Gators, Mike, who advance to the championship game. Walter Clayton leads the way with 34 points. Elijah Martin does enough with 17 of his own, but looked like that Auburn was probably the better team in the first half, and it looked like it was going down the stretch, but it's Florida that finds a way to win. It just seems like, to me, that if they're in a close game, that they're going to win it.
Yeah, Auburn definitely dominated the first half, but a lot of times in these close games, it's all about who can win the first 4 minutes of the second half. And in the first 4 minutes of the second half, Florida dominated right before that TV timeout. They got that game tied at 49, a quick 11-3 run to get this game back into play. And then when they did, look, Walter Clayton made some crazy shots coming down the stretch. It probably should have been a little bit more comfortable. If not for a couple of missed free throws there by Florida coming down the stretch. So that was made it a little bit nerving for the Gators, but able to get the job done. On the stat sheet, it only comes out to 8 of 21 from behind the arc, but it just felt like whenever they needed to make a shot, they put it in Walter Clayton's hands, and he was able to get the job done. 5 for 8 from behind the arc. He scored 34 points in this game, and he has the ability to will his team to victory, Sean. There's only a couple players that can really do that in college basketball. Cooper Flag, best player. Janiah Broome, probably the second best player. But I don't think either of them can truly put a team on their back in the same way that Walter Clayton can.
Yeah,
And it's just an outstanding performance.
to me, it has to be the closest feeling to Kemba Walker that we've had since, in terms of just like some of these plays, like they're not even running stuff for him. He's just getting the ball and scoring.
Yeah.
And I actually think Auburn did an okay job at covering him.
He had
Like,
contested shots.
they didn't. They were on him at when he crossed half court in transition. He didn't get many clean ones. Maybe one clean three that he made, and it was off an offensive rebound. But yeah, he is a problem because he is a good driver. He's good at passing, and he does not need room to shoot it and score. And he seems to me to be like the toughest. Like, okay, you just got to limit the easy ones, and if he makes tough ones, so what?
Yeah, and it seemed to match up really well against the physicality that Auburn usually plays with. Look, Walter Clayton was making contested three-pointers that were 5 feet behind the three-point. How are you going to defend that and then also defend against a guy that can drive to the bucket as well as he can? It's really tough. So just being that good of a shooter, there's not much Auburn could do. Look, Janiah Broome did not have his best game in an Auburn
Yeah,
uniform.
he
He
was
only
he was
had
clearly still injured, I thought.
clear, yes, absolutely. And I think a healthy Janiah Broome this is probably a little bit of a different game. Didn't get to a double double, just had 15 and 7, which are certainly nowhere near his highs for this year. Baker Mazzara also, he had a pretty good game in this one.
He kept them in
Um,
it in that second half
he
for a little bit.
he really did, but it just seemed like to me that Auburn, they didn't have their best stuff going into this game. They didn't have all their players healthy, and for me that showed. It really did. And it's funny, Sean. In most championship teams have a point in the tournament where it seems like they're dead in the water. That happened to Florida against Texas Tech. We thought it was over. Time and time again, it seems like we see that, and they just find a way to eke out a victory. They did against Texas Tech, and now they're rolling into the championship game.
Yeah, I actually thought Auburn's forwards, physicality wise, did cause some issues for Florida, especially considering Broom was. I mean, he was playing with one arm. His right shoulder was clearly bugging him, and his knee too, apparently.
Yeah.
But the Florida forwards did not do much. Condon 1 point, Chinyelu 5. Thomas Haw got to 12, but he hit a couple late shots, and he could have had more if he made his free throws. But
really, really struggled the free
I
throw line.
thought
Yeah.
he's 81% too, so I'm not really sure where that was from, but I thought Auburn's forwards did enough. They did lose the rebounding battle. Florida won the rebounds 39-30, but they made. I think they took Florida's forwards out of it for the most part. Chinyelu was the only one who was really a defensive threat inside, and had you told me that, thought we would have thought Auburn would have probably won the game, but offensively the Tigers really struggled. Denver Jones was 3 of 9, Miles Kelly 3 of 10, Tahad Pettiford 1 of 6. You need some guards to contribute in March to win games, and we had 50 plus points, 51 points from Martin and Clayton, and 25 from the 3 Auburn guards that I mentioned. So that's guard play wins games in the tournament, and that was the case here.
Yeah.
But all right.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Janai Broom, I think if he's 100% healthy, this is not saying that Florida doesn't win, but it's a different outcome because you see how much they dominated down low. If Janai Broom was able to have his way like he was earlier on in the season, this could have been a different outcome.
And he missed a couple of ones that he probably should have made anyway. He was 6 of 14 from the field. They didn't double him, which I thought was probably a let's see what he's got with the shoulder type move. And had he figured it out, maybe they do switch to that sort of action, but they didn't, and it never got to the point where he was a problem inside. So Todd Golden and Florida are headed to the championship game. And we had another game, Mike. We had Houston and Duke. It looked like Cooper Flagg and Duke, well, it didn't look like. They were the better team for most of this one. They're up by 6 at halftime. They stretched the lead to 13 with under 10 minutes left in the second half. But Houston stuck around. They hit a couple shots. They found themselves down 6 with 30 seconds left. A couple turnovers, missed free throws. And Houston comes back and wins 70-67. Sort of threw the whole game out the window. What happened? I thought Duke did a lot of things well. Schematically, Shire put his team in a good spot to win, but total and utter collapse.
Shocking, really, Sean. If you turned off your TV for about 30, 45 minutes and came back, you wouldn't know what happened because Duke had a 14-point lead in this game with 8 minutes to go. They were in control, and then the rest of the way, they only made one field goal. The rest of the time, it was one 3-point field goal made by Cooper Flagg. And it just seemed like everything fell apart. You're right. They had the game plan. They were clearly ready, and they outclassed a very good Houston team earlier on in this game. But I think they're probably a better team than Houston, to be honest.
Yeah.
Until they fell apart coming down the stretch, a lot of turnovers, not getting good shots. And Houston, they've got some sharpshooters. They found a way to just eke back into this game and then had that crazy stretch of plays there with 30 seconds to go to tie the game and then eventually to go ahead. Absolutely shocking end of this game. I was stunned, Sean. But it does show sometimes, in big time events. Look, Duke's a young team, and these guys probably didn't play a lot of wire to wire games this year in the ACC. They were blowing out teams. They didn't have a whole lot of tight ones, and that seemed to kind of show coming down the stretch. Maybe the nerves got to some of these young players.
And the two players with tournament experience for Duke, Mike Mason Gillis 6 minutes, not really a part of the game, and Tyrese Proctor was really the only other player on this team with significant tournament experience, and he let them down. He did not play well. He had a great tournament,
Yeah.
great end of the year, especially in the ACC tournament when Flag was out, but a couple of really poor decisions not to pass the ball to an open, better free throw shooter, and but I think I think Houston did a very good job to stick in this game because Duke was firing on all cylinders. Houston had like a ton of offensive rebounds. Cryer ended up with 26. He had a couple big threes just to keep them within reach. Because there is another way, Mike, where Houston goes down 20 and they're buried.
And Cryer single-handedly kept them in it in the first half.
Yeah.
I think Cryer, I don't have the stats on top of me, but I think he had 13, 14 points in the first half.
He had half the points at halftime, I think.
Of the 28 points that Houston had. He was fantastic. And agreed, but this is a super resilient Kelvin Sampson team. And one thing that you've seen if you've followed the Big 12 a lot this year is Houston's actually played a lot of tight games. They only lost one of them. That was against Texas Tech at home. This is clearly a very resilient team where they've gotten down a lot of times this year and been able to crawl back in the last 4 or 5 minutes. Kelvin Sampson said this is the best conditioned team he's ever had. When they were running their mile times earlier on in the summer, the worst mile time that they had on the team was 5 minutes 29 seconds. That's pretty stunning for entire basketball team. But it just shows this team was well conditioned. They've got a lot of experience. They've played with each other for years, with the exception of Cryer only being there 2 years. But it really showed that the character that this Kelvin Sampson squad had to stick in it and then just kind of get gritty coming down the stretch, get a couple steals, make a few buckets, and steal this game from Duke. Because that's what it was. This was a theft on the part of the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, they you got to give them credit for what they did down the stretch. Yeah. They did not deserve to win this game, considering what happened from minute 1 to 39. But I thought their rebounding was really impressive, and it's sort of like they're so good at it that you don't really notice it sometimes, but they were
plus 11 on the boards.
And Mike, Duke did not get a defensive rebound after the last media timeout, which the only time that they got a stop was a turnover, which I think there were 1 or 2 in there. But it was just the culture buzzword is going around for Houston and Kelvin Sampson, and there's no team with better culture than them. They even lost this game. I mean, they've had great retention over the years, only losing a few key players. They've got a few, like, Cryer's been around. He was a transfer, and then Uzan is the other one. Like, that is going to be a model that teams try. You try and get retention, maybe add with 1 or 2 transfers, but that's what the formula to me is, and there's no... They won a ton of games in the American, and people were wondering if that would translate to the Big 12, and after 2 years, it's safe to say that it has.
And that's the thing, Sean, is it's so tough to retain your talent right now on a year-to-year basis, the way that Houston's been able to do it. It's really impressive. Kelvin Sampson ought to teach a masterclass on it, because when you've had teams that have been gutted from one year to another, as a Baylor fan, I'm experiencing that right now. It's pretty tough and you're not building sustainability when you're just getting transfers that are coming in as a fifth-year senior. He's getting guys to stay in the program for 4 or 5, and in some cases, in Juwan Roberts' case, 6 years. That's incredible in this day and age in college basketball. And I think Houston has produced a model for consistency and for an ability to sustain your program for years to come. Hopefully, we start to see a lot more programs do a similar model that Houston is.
And it's not like these players that come in, Mike, are one and done 5-star NBA ready type players. They're not very high recruits. Emmanuel Sharp comes in 15 minutes off the bench as a freshman, 5 points. There's another world where Kelvin Sampson's not the coach, and I didn't start freshman year. They don't like me. I'm leaving. But Sharp doesn't do that. Roberts as well. At 10 minutes a game as a freshman, 1.9 points for Juwan Roberts. That player just turned into one of the most important players on a national championship appearing team.
And most of those guys are transferring, right? They're not playing a ton their freshman year. They're a 3 or maybe a low 4-star recruit. And they're saying, I'm going to jump ship because I want to play 30 minutes a game. So they're going to go play at some lower level school and then maybe go transfer back up after they've gotten some good playing time. That's how I think some of these younger players think now, and the ability to be able to recruit the right guys that want to get committed to the program and then get excited to stay in the program. That's something that needs to be copied. And you also look at Sean where Houston basketball was before Kelvin Sampson. I, I don't know if this team had won an NCAA tournament game since like the '80s with Hakeem Olajuwon and company.
Yep, that's
So
true. Actually, it was a while.
they, yeah,
Yeah,
30 plus years. So for them to be able to get to multiple Elite Eights, multiple Final Fours, and tomorrow they're going to have a shot to win the championship. It really is incredible what Kelvin Sampson's been able to do. Really building a program from scratch, and not only that, being able to build it for sustainable success even after he leaves. Houston basketball is in really good shape.
yeah.
And I feel bad for the guy that's got to replace him.
As good, and it's probably going to be his son Kellen, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And as good as Kelvin is, like I think he is one where he has probably built something that will the next coach will probably have the benefit of, and they might be able to keep it going. Um,
Hope so.
because
Yeah.
they're if you look at their coaching staff during the game, there's everybody has their role, and that's not rare to them. But all their coaches are engaged in the game. There are some programs that it's just the head coach talking to the players. But during timeouts, one assistant is talking to Roberts, the other one's talking to Cryer. And it just seems like the Kelvin has sort of amassed this Death Star type operation where he might be the guy who calls the shots at the top, but everybody is sort of contributing to the final product.
Not to toot to my own team, but it does from the coaching staff on down seem a lot like that 21 Baylor team where you had a bunch of assistant coaches that they were talking to their own players. They had their own huddle, and Scott Drew was only coaching for about 15 seconds of a full timeout, right?
Yeah.
Um, the issue is going to be, can he keep those guys, right? Are those assistants going to stay with the program, or are they going to take other head coaching jobs? You take a look at a team like Baylor that looked like they had sustainable success in 2021. Well, all of those assistants are now head coaches, most of them at high level programs. Um, and, you know, quickly the school went to one and dones and 1 year transfers. So I hope for their sake they can keep this going, but it does seem like it is a model for sustainability.
And it's sort of like the coordinators thing with football, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're it's rare for coordinators to be around for a long time because if they're good, they're probably leaving to get promoted somewhere, and if they're bad, they're
Yeah.
probably getting fired. And there are a couple of exceptions out there, but yeah, it seems like I'm not sure Kelvin Sampson thought that they'd be this good in the Big 12. I think we were both pretty correct in predicting that they'd stay at the top of the sport, probably the top 4 or 5 in the Big 12, but there was a 37 game stretch of Big 12 games, Mike, where they won 36 of them last season
That's
compared to this
incredible.
one. They started
And,
1
and
and 2
they
last year, but they
and
have been
how
incredible
many of those were
since.
tight wins too?
Yeah.
Looking at their schedule, they had numerous overtime victories,
You really had to earn
numerous
those wins.
3, 4, 5 point wins on the road in Waco, Lawrence, Kansas, in Stillwater, in really tough places to play, Morgantown, where they found a way to get the job done. And that's what's so impressive about Kelvin Sampson is like they're winning tough
Yeah.
games, really tough games. And that's what makes you battle tested to have such a comeback like they did against Duke last night is while they were down, they were not out. And you looked at the start of the year too. This team lost a lot of games early on in the season, Sean. They lost to Auburn, they lost to Alabama, they lost to San Diego State. I think in the middle of December, a lot of people were looking at this Houston team and thinking, yeah, this probably isn't the team that we expected. We would expect to go to a Final Four. Keep in mind they lost all these games within less than 5 points
And all those
more
teams
in
are
overtime.
good, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
against really good teams. But man, I mean, just incredible performance by the Cougars, and look forward to watching them represent the Big 12 tomorrow night.
And they had a lot of regular season success over the years, and I know they did make one Final Four, but they haven't really seen the March Madness success that they probably have deserved, and they've got everything out of this year. They were 4-3 at the end of November, and now they're 35-4. That is, there was a really close losses to good teams. Analytically, I think they were fifth when they were 4-3. So it's not like
Yeah.
they were playing horrible, but they're winning close games, and I'm excited for this game against Florida. Like Florida, very slight favorites right now at -1.5. Both teams sitting at 35-4. Both teams won their conference tournament. Not Florida did not win the SEC. Auburn did, but they just knocked them off, and they knocked them off before on the road. So over the course of the year, I think these are two of the four best teams. Like one can argue that Duke and Auburn were probably better over the course of the 40-game season, but both of these teams are playing their best basketball, at least at the end of the year. I know Florida's had a couple of scares where they probably should have lost to Texas Tech, but both these teams are incredibly tough to beat. You've got some really interesting matchups here, but right off the top, what is the thing you're looking most forward to between these two teams?
It's going to be a little bit like that Auburn Florida game. I'm looking at uh, how can the forward play of Auburn, or are they going to be able to dominate, or excuse me, the forward play of Houston, are they going to be able to dominate Florida? And then at the second time, how is Houston going to be able to stop Walter Clayton Jr.? Look, LJ Cryer is a tremendous offensive asset. He's not a great defensive player. So they're going to have to rely on Emmanuel Sharp to try to uh, shut down Walter Clayton. And he's a tremendous defensive guard. But will he be able to get the job done? It's really tough. No one's been able to do it in months here. So we'll see if he can. And then at the same time, like I said earlier, Houston has got a lot of physicality in their front court. Tugler, Jawan Roberts, a lot of people that have been around for a long time that are really physical, strong, and can stay through the game the whole time. Look, they gave up a lot of points to Cooper Flag um, and, and Knuckle, but this team was able to stick around and make some big plays and get some big rebounds coming down the stretch. So those are really the two things I'm looking at right now um, in this championship game.
Yeah, those are the two things. Let's go to Clayton first. Houston typically this year, no different from any other year, they're very aggressive on screens at the point of blitzing sometimes. At the least, it's a hard hedge. And they just make the guard give it up. And Braden Smith did it, and he had 15 assists. He only had 7 points. But they're going to make somebody else beat them on Florida, which is why I think Richard and Martin are the keys for Florida. I think Florida's forwards probably get beat up here. They probably don't score a lot of points. They probably lose the rebounding battle. But the 2 and the 3 were really good for Duke. Flag and Knippel, and Heidi had a nice game for Purdue, and that's how you have to beat Houston. And that to me is the X factor. Richard, Martin, can they get good shots out of the double? Can they spray it? Can they be accurate with their passes? It's something that Purdue is really good at, and why they were able to stick around. But I think they're going to make Clayton give it up. Now, sometimes he just shoots over the defenders and makes shots, but Martin and Richard are key for me. Can they contribute enough offensively? Because the forwards, I don't think, should be expected to do much.
No, yeah, totally agree. Um, can Florida and if Clayton gets shut down, who's going to be that next guy up for the Gators, right? And I think that's going to be a big part of this game. It's going to be really exciting, and in this game they weren't able to close Auburn out at the free throw line. Things got a little bit dicey there towards the end. Auburn had opportunities to make this game tighter. Florida didn't really shut the door all that well in the last minute of this game. Uh, if Florida doesn't shut the door on Houston, we could see a similar outcome. So I think this is going to be a really, really entertaining championship game. I'm really excited to watch it and see what happens.
All right, let's go to the other matchup, Mike. Houston's forwards versus Florida's. I thought Auburn's forwards caused a lot of problems for Florida. And considering Broom was playing with one arm, I think this is an area of concern for the Gators. I Chinyelu is probably the only one that can come even close physicality-wise, but Howe and Hanglotten and Condon all kind of did nothing versus Auburn. So I think Houston is going to attack the rim hard, early, often, attack the rim once the shot goes up, and I think I know how good Florida is in transition, but I think they might throw everything they have at the glass.
Look, Houston's an outstanding defensive team in transition. So I don't know if Florida's going to be able to get a whole lot of transition points in this game.
And it is like they throw a lot to the glass. Usually the teams that do that aren't good in transition, but they've found a way
I
to
know.
do both.
Yes, yeah, it's unbelievable, and it's just because they're so well conditioned compared to most teams. But you look at this battle, and let's just say hypothetically, like he did in this game, Condon gets into foul trouble. They're going to be in trouble. And one thing that Houston's really good at, while they're such a physical team, they're also good at drawing fouls. And I've seen this time and time again this year in the Big 12 season where their opposing big guys got in foul trouble. And look, Florida doesn't really have the depth right now. If they get a couple
They're
guys in foul trouble
eight,
early on
maybe
in this game,
seven guys, maybe an eighth.
yeah,
Yep.
if they get into foul trouble early on, this is going to be a really tough night for Florida to be able to stick with the physicality, especially coming down the stretch of Houston. So I think it's a huge advantage for the Cougars.
So it could be which of the areas of disadvantage plays closer to a tie. Do Houston's guards make enough shots, or do Florida's forwards hold their own and don't let Houston get 20 offensive rebounds? They did get 18 against Duke. So I thought Malawak, he had 0 rebounds for Duke. He had a ton where he just went up with one hand and didn't grab it. You've got to be
and think about how good Duke's big guys are, too.
Yeah. They had 5 rebounds compared to Houston's 18 from the forwards.
And Duke's got one of the best front courts in college basketball. It's shocking. It's shocking. So, man, we'll see. This is going to be a really tough one. I think it's just all going to come down to Walter Clayton Jr. I really feel like at the end, is he going to be able to do enough to offset the forward struggles that I anticipate for Florida?
I don't know if Houston can blow him out. I think that if it's a close game, it could go either way. I think Florida could bury Houston if they make a ton of shots, but again, it's really hard to do that against a team like Houston, the way that they're defending. But this is one I could see it going either way. I think it's very close to a 50-50 coin toss. Very contrasting styles. Walter Clayton, the best guard in the tournament, probably, and then we've got a number of Houston guards who have had very good tournaments too. So, Mike, let's wrap this up with a prediction.
My heart says Houston, but my brain says the Florida Gators. And it really just comes down to one player alone. We've said it half dozen times already. Walter Clayton Jr. is probably the best guard we've seen in March Madness since Kemba Walker. There's been a few great ones, Shabazz Napier, Davion Mitchell, but I don't know if we've seen a guy put his team on his back quite like Walter Clayton since Kemba. So I think he's just going to be too much. He's going to be able to do too much and going to be able to create a distraction for some of his other guards. Probably get Martin involved in this one. And I think at the end of the day, look, Florida, their offensive numbers still weren't jumping off the screen in this Auburn game. If they get hot from behind the arc, it's going to be tough for Houston to do anything defensively, despite them being such a good defensive team. So while I want to pick Houston, I'm going to keep to my bracket pick and go with the Florida Gators.
I'm going to go the other way. I think Houston wins this. I think the physicality will be too much. I know they could shoot their way to a victory, but again, stadium shots. We didn't see it as much in this Final Four, probably because these teams are just good enough, but it is usually hard to shoot in football stadiums. And it has been in the past. And, if you miss your first couple against Houston and you've got to go to the rim to score, I mean, good luck, because you're not going to score at the rim. You might get some free throws, but you aren't going to have very many open layups. But I think Houston wins a close one here. I think they're better equipped for a close game. I think it's awfully likely that this one is close. So give me Houston by 4. Could see Florida winning. I probably want Florida to win, honestly. But it is going to be a good one. We'll be back earlier or later in the week, I guess, if you're watching this Monday morning, to recap this one and get into some of our off-season content. But thank you, everybody, for playing the bracket pool, the Survivor pool. We had a winner already. And then we've got some more. We got a Masters contest coming up just 1 week away for the tournament down there in Augusta. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.